I think it demonstrates a commitment on the part of the U.S. to deepen U.S. Africa economic partnerships. And I think this is significant because Africa is looking for sustained engagement and not episodic interest. And so I think Secretary Yellen's visit is a demonstration of that sustained commitment. I think it's important to keep in mind that U.S. economic engagements in Africa are already substantial, but as the world's largest economy, the upside for expanding that relationship in Africa is considerable. And I think it's also notable that Africa is a very economically dynamic region. It has a rapidly growing population, growing middle class. By 2050, Africa is expected to account for $16 trillion in spending. And so there's a lot of shared opportunities that both sides have in seeing this relationship deepen.
Secretary Yellen will discuss the ways that the United States is working with African leaders to build a stronger and more resilient economy on the continent that benefits their citizens, the U.S., and the entire world. What would that entail?
Well, the economic sectors that the U.S. is looking to invest more in, like power, transportation, communications infrastructure, information technology, these are not only creating public goods, but these are sectors that will generate a lot of jobs. And so, in effect, these investments are going to be improving the productive capacity in Africa that could have very far-reaching economic benefits for years to come. These partnerships are likely to build on the large African diaspora in the United States. And so it really has the prospect to build ties across a wide range of communities and businesses. These are not likely to be just focused on extractive industries. They're not likely to be just sort of government-to-government deals. Rather, they're likely to be more broad-based partnerships that are going to benefit a broader range of Africans, especially connect with the growing middle class in Africa. I think with these investments, we're also likely to see more of the value chain being based in Africa and therefore further creating some ripple effects.
During her trip, the Secretary will also underscore the spillover effects of Russia's illegal war in Ukraine, which have disproportionately hurt developing countries in the African continent and globally. What steps would the U.S. take to help African countries cope with the food insecurity?
Russia's invasion of Ukraine did seriously hurt Africa with very acute price shock, causing a spike in consumer food prices. Russia provides 30% of the grain supplies going into Africa. This is primarily wheat. And with Africa's growing urban population, we're expecting to see the demand for wheat to grow even more. And so I think one of the ways the United States can assist is to help Africa diversify its supply of grain sources so it's not so reliant on Russia and its erratic behavior and its potential for disrupting future supply lines. I think more over the medium and longer term, the U.S. will continue to invest in agricultural research and agricultural productive capacity. This has been a mainstay of U.S. engagement in Africa for decades, and I think we can expect to see that expand moving forward. It's a two-way partnership, of course, and many African countries will want to gain access to U.S. markets with their food production, and that's something the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, which has been very popular in Africa, has done. And I think there'll be effort to try to build that out further. The U.S. has been a big supporter of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, which will further stimulate Africa-to-Africa trade, especially in food products, which will tap the vast potential for food production on the continent. I think it's important we talk about food. In Africa, food is a particularly important sector because 70% of households rely on agriculture for their livelihoods. So food production is a means of generating jobs and capital that can further spur economic development. I think it's also important to recognize that 80% of the acute food insecurity we see in Africa is a result of conflict. And so one of the practical ways the United States can help Africa deal with the food insecurity challenges that it faces is through helping to mediate conflicts on the continent and help be an honest broker between the various parties, hold